everyone, and welcome back to the Gaelic Lives podcast in association with Hastings Hotel. You're very welcome to our review show, and it's our last review show, our last National League review show of the year, after the final round of action on Sunday. And there was plenty going on across all the divisions involving all Ulster counties. The majority, I think, had something to play for, so it was an exciting weekend. And now I'll come to you first. I suppose we'll start in Omagh because. Tyrone are relegated on 7 points, while Kerry are in the league final with 8 points. It's probably not a fair reflection of Tyrone's campaign to be relegated, and certainly not a fair reflection of their performance in Omagh.
Yeah, it's a pity. They're the first team ever to be relegated from Division One on 7 points. So it's just one of those things. But at times yesterday, it looked like they might stay up because there was a spell, for example, where Donegal were edging Mayo, and then later on Donegal got a penalty against Mayo. So I was getting my hopes up at times, but yeah, at the same time, it was always going to be very unlikely for Tyrone to wrangle their way out of the relegation zone, and that's how it proved in the final end up. But it was a very good performance, I thought, with the caveat that maybe Dublin weren't as fussed as they may otherwise have been. Maybe when they'd more to play for themselves. I don't know how fussed they were about getting to league final Dublin. But there were plenty of positives from a Tyrone perspective. His best game has seen Darragh McCurry play for Tyrone, and probably since 2023, which is only a year ago, but he still played a lot of matches in the meantime. He was excellent. He scored 9 points. I'm wondering whether the return of Mark Bradley is maybe giving them a point to prove, because Mark started against Donegal and then Darren came on late on and played quite well, and Mark missed out yesterday through injury. I don't know how bad the injury is. I presume it's not too worrying, I would like to think. And Darragh McCurry was excellent. And he linked up very well with Darragh Canavan up front as well, which is very pleasing. Like, they obviously conjured up a brilliant goal. Darragh McCurry played a brilliant crossfield pass. Darragh was waiting behind his man, then he sort of swiveled around and put it in the back of the net. It was an excellent goal. Probably talk a bit more about that later. I think I put it down as my goal or score of the weekend. All our positives as well. The full back line has been very solid, even though Paddy Hampsley's been injured. At the start of the campaign, you're thinking, geez, that's a big blow. And it is a blow. It still is a blow that Paddy's out. But Peter Tegg, who's back in the fold after a few years out, has been very solid in the full back position. Midfield pair has been excellent, Brian Kennedy and Colin Kilpatrick. But I suppose when Tyrone reflect on their league campaign and while they've been relegated, they'll rue a couple of missed opportunities. They were well ahead. Well, I think, if my memory serves me correctly, they were at least 4 or 5 points up against Kerry heading into the final quarter, and they didn't end up getting over the line. Then against Galway, it looked like Matty Donnelly had hit the winner, and then they breached the 3v3, and Shane Walsh got an equaliser, the last kick of the game, and ultimately that's why Tyrone are playing Division 2 football in 2026. But I thought the lads, I was at the game trying to get a few interviews afterwards as usual, and they were obliging and they were in good form and whatnot. So I get the impression it's a happy Tyrone camp heading into a championship.
I think that's the big thing they'll take now is they'll be disappointed that they're relegated, obviously, but the fact that they played so well yesterday, they still have boys to come back, like you mentioned, Mark Bradley, Hampsley still to come back in there. Rory Canavan's only really been a bit part player in the league. Like, I don't think he started many games, so heading into the championship, they're going into it in fine fettle, and despite being relegated.
Yeah, I think they're in a good place, and it's something I've spoken about before, but I think there's more competition in the squad than there has been in recent years, particularly with Mark Bradley, as you mentioned there, back in the fold, Peter Tegg, Rory Brennan, and then these young lads from the recent All-Ireland Under-20 winning teams coming through. There's a new manager as well, and I suppose first and foremost, it's common enough there's a bit of a bounce when a new manager comes in, and it's not just any old manager, it's Malachy O'Rourke. He's one of the very best managers in the entire country, So he does seem to be getting a tune out of them, and I just hope to carry that into the championship, as you say.
And just into Division 2, I think another team that's going to take a bounce from their league campaign into the championship is Down, despite being relegated. Pretty unfortunate that probably their best performance of the year came on the final day against Monaghan, who are in the league final. and it wasn't enough to save them in the end. Results elsewhere saw them relegated. So it's a pretty disappointing for Conor Laverty and the Down squad. But I think, Niall, as you were saying about Tyrone, I think Down are going to take positives from it in terms of they've shown that they can live with it at this level. Their performance against Roscommon at the start of the league campaign, seeing them against Monaghan yesterday, even against the likes of Meath at home, beating Cork, having come from 10 points down. Like Louth only beat them by a couple of points. Like all these teams that are competing in Division 2, and the majority of them were pushing for Division 1 football as well. Down done pretty well against them, and that was against Cavan as well, I should have mentioned. But I suppose in terms of Saturday or Sunday's game, Monaghan, it was going to take an exceptional set of results for Monaghan not to be in the Division 2 league final. So I'm not sure if they maybe took their foot off the gas or not. I don't think so. I think it was Down that played, like their lives depended on it, and again showed why they should be at this level. The likes of Owen Murdoch there, Danny McGill, Pat Haverin, all superb players. Caleb Doherty, they were outstanding and have been for Down over the last couple of years under Conor Laverty. So Down, they're gone out of Division 2, and that means obviously Tottenham Cup football possibly next year as well. But they haven't won the Tottenham Cup. They're still in the Sam Maguire this year, and they have Fermanagh, I think, at home in the first round of the Ulster Championship. So they'll be buoyed by their championship, by their league campaign, and I think they'll hope to carry that form in. Monaghan, on the other hand, they're into the league final. They await the winners of Donegal and Derry in the championship, so they have a couple of weeks to spare. So getting a run out in Croke Park, I think it's just mad. When you had Paul Finlay on last week, I was thinking it's 20 years since that the Monaghan team beat Meath. I think that was maybe the Division 2 league final in 2005. So going back, winning silver in Croke Park is a big thing for Monaghan. So I'd say they'll be going all guns blazing for this weekend in the Division 2 final against Roscommon. And Mal, I'll take you in here, just we'll jump back up to Division 1 then. It was Armagh and Derry in the final round of the league, as obviously Derry had nothing to play for, but Armagh did have something to play for, and I suppose that was reflected on the final scoreline.
Certainly was 424 to 118, and 4 goals in 7 or 8 minutes at the start of the second half was obviously where the game was decided. Shane McGuigan picking up a double yellow was a major factor as well, because just with the extra man, Armagh used it really well, and it left them in a really good situation. Even though there was only 4 in at half time, it gave them a chance to sort of think how they were going to use that extra man. And then the other side of it is that from Derry's point of view, it might have given them a chance to regroup, but then came the goals, and there was actually a warning shot before that. There was a high ball come in, hit the post, and I think it was Connor Turbot fisted the ball, he was rushing in, but he didn't make the connection. And then the next one, I think it was Soupy's one, come off the post, and Ross McQuillan, there was basically nothing but green grass and Ben McInnes to go to aim at, and he put it into the back of the net. And a lot of Armagh's goals were quite similar in the fact that it was all coming from direct balls that Derry couldn't deal with and didn't react to. But and then the fourth goal actually was the short kick out, and I think it was Callum O'Neill got his foot in where the short kick out where the defender can't go inside the D, and then across to Darren McMullen, and he's a lively looking character. He hit the ball to the back of the net. I think it was Rory Grugan made a pass it to him, but 4:22 from play, Sean, from Armagh, 12 different scores, the 10 different first half scores. So from their point of view, that's a really significant set of stats. And then also they had only 6 starters from the All Ireland winning team, which is quite significant as well. Obviously, the bench was a big impact last year. Like Soupy started, scored 4 points. Ross McQuillan, who probably typified Armagh in how he raced through for the first point. He just had a zip of a team that needed a result, whereas Derry had nothing to play for. But obviously, if you look down the people who Armagh are hoping to get back, Aaron McKay, Ben Creeley, Niall Grimley, TK, just ones that happen to come into my head. So they're in a decent position. But you have to feel for Tyrone, like 7 points and you're gone. 7 points, and funny, like if Colin Reap had scored that point at the end of the Mayo game, Armagh's down. Do you know that's how fine a line it is? And There's a couple of years ago, Derry finished third in Division 2 on 11 points and didn't get promoted. And it's just weird the way it works out sometimes. But no, Armagh in a good position. But the Derry situation is a really worrying one. Obviously, we're not going to talk an awful lot about it because it's a lot deeper than the next 2 or 3 minutes will lend itself to. But like, their biggest problem is the alarm bells are ringing about depth. Like, it really is. Like, Armagh started with six of their All-Ireland winning team. The best performance Derry have had in recent times was against Kerry under Kieran Mina, and at the tail end of Rory Yaller's reign, they had only 9 of them players to call on. But the difference is Armagh had that greater depth, and it comes back to the debate that I've had on here numerous times, where it comes back to under 21 progress and half the county not producing county players for whatever reason. So that's a major alarm bells ringing that probably is a deeper dig than anything that Paddy Talley or the management team can look at right now. It's probably a longer term project where, Derry County Board probably need to put together some sort of, if they haven't really done so, some sort of a football committee to find out where the depth's going to come from, because as much as Derry had a really positive set of results, it was based around about 18, 19 players that they got the best out of, but it's not sustainable. You pick up injuries. And then, as Niall touched on with Tyrone, where it's a sort of a Mark Bradley versus Darren McCurry, and they're sort of veering off to see who's going to start. Whereas, to be totally honest, the only positive you can really take out of Derry's league campaign has been Marty Bradley, and that's quite worrying. But again, that's a deeper dig for another day, and it's probably something that Paddy Talley has unfortunately inherited. He's come into something late. He's come into something where there's not enough to work with around the edges. But again, I always maintain the story is all about the winners, and Armagh have, I said a couple of weeks on here, Sean, they look like a team that's equipped for the summer, but now they can focus on that, and it's very, very unfortunate that from the head-to-head, Tyrone's sitting on the other side of the coin. But to sum up relegation, Tyrone are going down with loads to build on. Derry's going down with loads of answers to try and find, some of which they're not going to get in the next 2 or 3 months.
And obviously, with the championship just around the corner, it's Donegal and Derry up first small, so we'll be talking a lot more about Derry in the next couple of weeks. And now I'll just pop back down to Division 2, and Cork defeated Cavan at the weekend. And the way things ended up, if Cavan had got a point here, that ended up in Division 1 next year, with Roscommon drawing with Westmeath. So an unfortunate day for Cavan that they were at home too. So if they had got a result here, that have been in the promotion shake-up, and that's unfortunately they dropped out of that with their defeat.
Yeah, a bit of a missed opportunity for Cavan, all told. Though I read Raymond Gallagher's quotes after the game, and he was fairly philosophical about it, because I suppose on the whole he still had a good league campaign, and he said there's been a few matches where they've got the rub of the green and whatnot, so he was fairly stoic about the whole thing. Dar McVeety had an effort and goal later on to get a draw. He thought he had to beat the Hooter, but because the rules have changed in recent weeks, he sort of erred in that instance. But Dar McVeaty's been a brilliant servant for Cavan football, so I don't think anyone will be too harsh on him. And he was just trying to get the result, or get the point for them. Cork were the better team, and led at one point by 8 points, 15 points to 7, and Cavan did very well to come back into it. I think they scored about 4 pointers in the whole, which is something they've been pretty good at, which is possibly no surprise when you have the likes of Grove McKiernan about the place. On the whole, it's been a very productive league campaign for Cavan. They lost their first 2 matches by a combined 18 points, and the knives are being sharpened, I suppose. There's quite a bit of discussion about it online, about where exactly Cavan were going, but they certainly turned things around with 4 wins on the trot, and they're in a good position heading into the championship match against Tyrone next month. And even though they're in a good form, they're coming in under the radar. Very few people are going to expect them to get a result against Tyrone, so they'll be happy enough, I think.
So just before we move on to the rest of the action, we're going to take a quick break, and we'll hear from our sponsors, the Everglades Hotel, and we'll move on to part 2 shortly.
Experience hospitality the Northwest way at the Everglades Hotel. Located on the banks of the River Foyle, the Everglades Hotel is just minutes from the centre of Derry, Londonderry, with free on-site guest car parking. Whether you're here for a family meal, a big celebration, or simply a peaceful retreat, we'll make your experience as memorable as the sights in the city. Visit Everglades Hotel Derry for accommodation bookings, the latest menus, live shows and events, and much, much more. See you there.
And while the last Division 1 game we're going to touch on was, of course, Donegal and Mayo, and I think we knew Donegal's intentions before this game that they weren't fussed on on reaching a league final, and with, I don't know, maybe 10 or 15 minutes left, Mayo were getting relegated, and suddenly they're finished top of the league and they're in a league final. So so I think that game sort of reflected how crazy the last day was.
Here, it just sums up the league. Like Mayo, correct me if I'm wrong here, I think they've got a minus score difference. I'm not sure what it is, and they're on 9 points, and Tyrone are on 7. Like, that's absolutely crazy. But no, I think obviously you need the 2-week break between the championship to make the league really meaningful. But from Donegal's point of view, they were 4 down at half time. I think it was Jack Carney had got a goal for Mayo in the first half. Owen McHugh on as a sub, I think. I haven't, because the games are all at the same time, I'm sort of only going on bits and pieces here, to be honest, lads. But like, he got a goal, and then it came down to Dara Wheels' penalty, and Colin Reap saved it. It wasn't the world's best penalty, he's a good striker of the ball, so that had a big impact on obviously what way the game finished up. So like Donegal that day in Ballyshannon when they beat Derry, I just remember Jim McGuinness's quotes. He says that they would be preparing for each game in the best way it would suit their panel, was the way he used the phrase. And I think from a point of view of a manager, whenever you have got the points on the board, you're entitled to make your team selections whatever way you want. And if it's a case of finding yourself with balance across the team for the championship, so be it. And that's probably where he's got to. Like, he needed to get Michael Langan back yesterday, who's got a few minutes under his belt. I think that's his first. I think he might have played the first couple of games, not too sure, but he missed virtually the most of the league, Sean. So he's a big plus coming back. But like Mayo and Kerry in the league final, and at one stage you could have made a case for either of them being relegated. From Donegal's point of view, they didn't have Sean Patton, they didn't have Owen Van Gallagher. I saw I think it might have been Donegal Live reporting. Jim obviously said after the game yesterday where Owen Van is doubtful for the championship, but I see Keelan McColgan's got 2 starts in a row, so he's that same dynamic type of player who can get forward to score. So that's the thing with Donegal now. They've got an option there. Pater Mogan didn't play, Michael Murphy didn't play, Patrick McBurdy, and obviously Oisin Gallen. So that's quite a bit of quality there, Sean, that's just come off. I've just rhymed off there. So that's where they are. They've made no bones about it that the Ulster Championship is a major focus. Some of the provincials are sort of like lip service championships, but Ulster's completely different. And Donegal are one of those counties that really pride themselves on the Ulster Championship, and they absolutely celebrate every time they win it. So, homecoming and all those things as if it's in All Ireland. So you can just imagine their focus is now on Derry, but it probably, let's choose my words properly here, but it probably harms everybody else in the league if a team prioritises team selection over absolutely going gung-ho to win the league or get to a league final. But you have to, if you're going to respect the league properly, you need to have a proper structure, because it not only harms the focus of teams in it, where they win it whether they try and win the league versus the championship. But and then the other side of it is, if a competition is left in such a way that there's no other way around it, well, it leaves other teams, it's going to suffer. But I'll stand by my words. Teams are entitled to look after their own house, but I think the GA need to get their housekeeping in order, either a 2-week break or scrap the league final, or else, lads, Division 1 is just going to be an absolute waste of diesel.
Now we'll head down to Division 3. Fermanagh finished on a high. There was an outside possibility that they were going to get promoted here, but obviously they needed other results to go their way. But they done all they could. They beat Laois on the day, so they'll be happy to finish the league champion with a win.
Yeah, no, they had a pretty good finish to the league campaign, and funny enough, at half time yesterday, it was looking like they might even get promoted, which I wasn't really expecting, just from reading into reading into the various permutations before the match, but they had put themselves in a good position. Unfortunately, results elsewhere did end up going as expected, which meant they missed out. But it was still a good win for Fermanagh. Their manager, Kieran Donnelly, rued their result against Clare a month or so back, because he felt that was the one that got away, that they played really well that day but just couldn't get the scores. And if they had won that match, they probably would have ended up getting promoted. But on the whole, it's been a solid enough league campaign from Fermanagh. So like Tyrone and like a few other teams we've spoken about, I think they'll be in good enough form heading into a championship.
And Mal Antrim are back down to Division 4. A tough day for them yesterday and a tough campaign, I suppose.
Yeah, that's difficult. Like, Division 4 is obviously the bottom league, and they fought quite hard to get out of it. And then now, when the dust settles, like teams are relegated, they're automatically thinking about how they're going to get back up, and that's for another day. But they're going to have to gather the pieces together. On the game itself, they were missing Mark Jordan and Michael Byrne from a personnel side of things. They were 14-9 down at half time. Niall Kelly got a goal for Kildare. I think they got 1-8 without reply. I think it was 15 minutes before Connor Stewart got Antrim's opening point. It might have been a 2-pointer as well. And I think there was 10 minutes of the second half where they didn't score. But Finn Nagel, his 4th goal of the campaign, he came on as a sub, and he gave them a chance. But the problem was Kildare then. I think Kildare hit the last maybe 6, 7, 8 points of the game just by following on Twitter, to basically hammer it home. They were always favourites to top the league, I felt anyway, Kildare. Antrim's point of view, Dominic McGinhill, I think Antrim's hit something like 3 1-pointers, and the rest of their scores were 2-pointers. Dominic McGinhill got 4 of them. Ryan McCullen on the score sheet as well. But it was a tall order, because they needed, obviously, the Sligo result to go in their favour, which was always going to be difficult as well. But it just leaves Antrim with a difficult situation in the fact that they're relegated. They'll have regrets about a couple of games, a wee bit like Niall's touching on there, where games went against them where they could end it up in safety, or maybe even pushing towards the top 2 or 3 spots. So that's the other side of it. You have the whole dark side of Division 4 to dig themselves out of next year. And then I suppose the elephant in the room is that Antrim's last game of the year? Because I don't know, unless you boys have heard something different, the way it seems to be sitting is the game is fixed for Park, the championship game, that is. The game is fixed for Park Esser. Antrim, as far as they're concerned, is fixed for Corrigan. And as we speak at the moment, I don't think there's any give on it. So we're going to have the farcical situation where Armagh could be in Newry and Antrim could be in Belfast, and the referee throws up the ball, and then they're out of the championship, they're out of the Talton Cup, and I don't know. Be unprecedented, lads, if that happens, but that's realistic now. So ears to the ground, eyes open. What's going to happen next? But I suppose, like Sean, as an Armagh man, the way you're looking at it is it's Armagh versus Antrim in the championship, and that's all Armagh can prepare for. And now Antrim are sitting probably like a waiting game, but really, really bizarre. I don't know what's going to happen, lads, to be honest. But my own opinion on it is that the game needs to be in Corrigan. But that's just my opinion. But bizarre that Antrim's season could be over today.
I think I'd be shocked. I still would be very surprised if it doesn't go ahead in Corrigan Park. But that's maybe just the optimist in me. That
I think that'd be a sensible option, but we're not. We're not going to solve anything here today, lads.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if it's not in Corrigan Park, but we'll have to wait a couple of weeks and see how that all pans out. Just before we move on to our highlights, we're going to go through the rest of the results. And in Division 2 of the Hurling League, Derry retained their status in the second tier, while relegating Donegal. They had a big win, 2-23 to 0-9. Thomas Brady and Shea Cassidy got the goals for Derry, and that's Donegal down to Division 3 next year. And they'll be joined by Tyrone, who were already down, but they lost to Kerry at the weekend, 1-13 to 1-19. Armagh held on to their Division 3 status despite losing to London in the final round. Armagh lost not 10 to 2-15, but results elsewhere saw them stay safe, while Cavan, they've been relegated to Division 4. And then down to Division 4, Longford beat Monaghan, while Fermanagh beat Lancashire, and that means that Fermanagh have been promoted. They're up to Division 3, so a good campaign for them. The ladies then, Armagh suffered their first defeat in Division 1 this season at the hands of Waterford, with 10 points. The difference in the end, 122 to 112, but Armagh have still made the league final. So that is a positive for Armagh despite losing their first game of the year. Tyrone still have it all to do. They played Dublin at the weekend and it finished Tyrone 3-4. Dublin 1-11. So Tyrone go into the final day against Kildare with a chance of still staying up. Donegal avoided relegation at the weekend. They beat Tipperary 0-10 to 0-7, while Monaghan suffered a big defeat to Galway 7-23 to 4 points. And in Division 3, Cavan beat Laois. They earned promotion to 16 to 0-11. Aisling Gilson and Ali Brady got the goals, while Down beat Offaly 3-12 to 1-7. In terms of Camogie then, Antrim beat Clare 5-12 to 110, but the two sides will meet again in the league final, of course, so I'm not sure how much Antrim will be reading into that result, while Wexford beat Down 115 to 0-5. In Division 2A, Derry's first half goal against Meath saw them win by 9 points. It was 116 to 0-10, while Armagh suffered another defeat. Kerry beat them 210 to 0-6, and Tyrone had a massive win over Louth in Division 3, and they won 5-18 to 0-1. So our highlights of the week then, men, we'll start with our players of the week. And Mal, you've went with James Naughton from Limerick.
Yeah, I know we're an Ulster-based pod, but 4 goals and 12 points is just absolutely cracking scoring, to be fair. And as I say, sometimes a lot of lower divisions don't get the same, I suppose, level of promotion, but 4-12 just speaks for itself. Brilliant performance.
And Nell, you were talking about Darren McCurry earlier. He's your player of the week.
Yeah. I probably don't need to say too much more. He couldn't have played any better, really. It was a really, really top class display.
And I picked Suzanne White from Donegal. She got 6 points at the weekend, and as I'd mentioned, that was it. Their win was enough to make sure they stayed in the division. So I picked her as my player of the week. I suppose result of the week, Nell, me and you both went for Down's victory over Monaghan, and while it counted for nothing in the end in terms of it wasn't enough to keep them up, it was still a good performance from Down.
Yeah, no, he really went down fighting, and Conor Laverty was very pleased with the performance and all else, and the result too. I suppose it's just a pity from their perspective. It wasn't enough to stay up.
And your result of the week, Mal, you picked the Derry Hurlers beating Donegal.
Yeah, I'll caveat that with Sean. I would actually put it and their performance against Meath together because collectively it kept them up. And on both performances, I was at both games. They were absolutely excellent in everything that they did. And full credit to Johnny McGarvey for, that was a pressure game. They needed to win. And it's also worth mentioning there that Donegal are relegated on 4 points in that division, which is a wee bit like my shock of the week, Tyrone being relegated on 7. I do feel the GA need to look into the case of only one team going down to Division 2 in hurling would have been is something that needs to be called for, because Donegal had an excellent season themselves. But fair play to Johnny McGarvey for turning that season around, and it gives them something to build on going into the Christian Cup now. So,
and shock of the week, Mal, we've already touched on your one in terms of Tyrone being relegated. So Nell, your one was a red card for Offaly's James McMahon.
Yeah, I just saw it pop up on social media over the weekend. I don't like criticising referees, but it was a complete joke of a red card. Geez, it wasn't even a free, let alone a red card. Can't wrap my head around that one.
And I picked Cavan's defeat to Cork just essentially because of the way the results ended up. Cavan needed to win this and to get promotion, and they would have if they'd won it. So it was also in Breffni Park, so it was a bit of a shock. Our score of the week were an unanimous agreement that it was Darragh Canavan's goal, and I suppose now you were in Oma, so I'll let you take this one. You did sort of reference it earlier, his link-up play with Darren McCurry.
Yeah, it was just a beautifully worked goal. Dara McCurry with an exquisite pass right outside of his boot, the Dara, who fielded the ball superbly, and then he just sort of swiveled around and put it in the bottom left hand corner of the net. Yeah, it was just an excellent team move and finish, and really, really good skills as well, which I suppose is what we all want to see.
And your unsung hero, Mal, Cassie MacArthur from Antrim.
Yeah, she scored 4-2 against Clare, but as you said, they play them next week in the league final. But 4-2 is an amazing it's an amazing return, and I've actually got a feature this week with Nicole McAtamney about the Antrim Camogie scene and the fact that, and she did mention the strength and depth that they have. So likes of Cassie coming in there with 4-2 is going to give them something going forward into the season. But all eyes will be on, I think it's Abbottstown this weekend, where they play Clare in the final. So definitely worth a mention there for Cassie. 4-2, some tally.
And Sean McNally was your unsung hero, Nell.
Yeah, just heard he pulled off quite a few important saves, and he's an excellent goalkeeper. Maybe doesn't get the credit he deserves, and not for the first time. He, I suppose, pulled it out of the bag for Fermanagh in this year's league campaign.
And I went with Ross McQuillan for Armagh. Just suppose he's been in and out of the squad, maybe, in and out of the team in the last couple of years, but he's probably a nailed on starter going into the championship given his league performances, and he crowned that off at the weekend. I think he scored 1-2, so the new rules maybe just suit McQuillan a wee bit more space, the pace and power he has, so hopefully a big year from an Armagh point of view for Ross McQuillan. So that's all we have for our review show. We'll be back as usual later in the week, and we'll be back every Thursday and Monday with preview and review shows. So make sure to follow us on Spotify if that's where you get your podcasts, or subscribe to our YouTube channel if you're out of the video version. So thanks everybody for tuning in, and thanks to Nell and Mal for giving us their thoughts. We'll be back and chat to everybody later in the week.
Thanks, Sean.
Thanks.